Today's topic is going to be on WTF is tech art, and it's a roundtable discussion with our wonderful guests today, starting with Mr. Jan Kaluza here.
Hello. Yeah, just to introduce myself, I'm Jan. I am lead tech artist at Deep Silverfish Labs. I've been there for a little over 4 years. I'm kind of a self-taught game developer, kind of coming from indie dev, lots of freelancing before that. Yeah, happy to be here.
And joining us as well, we have Mr. Anthony Davis.
Hi, I am Anthony. I'm senior tech artist at Unity, currently with their verticals, working with automation, machine learning stuff. It's kind of crazy. Prior to that, I was at EA, and then prior to that, it was a bunch of indie stuff and hang out with all these cool kids at RTVFX Discord and every other Discord server that we're on. And yeah, that's me.
And last but not least, it's the man who speaks the most, Mr. Christian Spark.
Hey there, my name is Christian. I am a technical artist at Heart Machine. Prior to just this last week landing a job there, I was freelancing for various individuals and companies and working independently, learning independently for about 7 years. Super excited to finally kind of be in this space in a permanent capacity, and really excited to kind of try and leave a positive footprint while I'm here.
Rock on.
Welcome to the Real-Time Visual Effects Podcast, the place to hear from some of the video game industry's most seasoned artists and up your game. Listen in on how you can learn and grow as a VFX artist, discover your own wizard, and network with hundreds of other talented magicians in the real-time visual effects community. Here is your host, Travis McCallum.
Our first topic of discussion, we want to understand what the F is tech art. How would you define this unknown kind of idea or concept? And let's start with you, Anthony.
Yeah, so my angle is a little bit unique because I love VFX, but I'm not in VFX as my current specific focus and job. So tech art for me is slightly different. I focus a whole lot on tool development, optimization, and trying to help the rest of the team get their jobs done. So in a VFX realm, if I were to say that, I am helping them with tools to just make better effects with whatever the project would be. So that is my tiny slice of what tech art actually is, I would say. Jan, what do you think about that?
It's definitely a part of it. I've described myself as a tech artist for most of my career, but I still have trouble kind of defining it and kind of just framing it, like where does it start and stop. Tech artists are usually the people on the team who are not afraid to cross disciplinary boundaries, who run into kind of those boundaries and then see, hey, I want to learn more. I want to know kind of how do these departments work? How do those disciplines work? How do I solve their problems? What problems do they have and how can I help? And that is usually kind of what you see in a good tech artist, is the ability to be a sponge and kind of gobble up all of the knowledge that they find. And that makes a good tech artist because you are kind of between the disciplines. You're kind of the bridge between the art department and other departments, design and programming and so on. You have to keep those together. You have to be able to talk programmer and talk artist, make sure that they understand each other. It's a lot of interfacing and a lot of kind of avoiding misunderstandings and trying to make sure that everyone is pulling in the right direction. And that to me is kind of like the core of tech art, is a lot of making sure everyone else can do their job.
What do you think it is, Christian?
Kind of echoing what Jan said, yeah. I feel like a good technical artist is kind of an intersection for a bunch of different disciplines, be it art and animation and VFX and engineering and programming, kind of in a almost masochistic way, trying to gather as much information as you can and use it as fluidly and expertly as you can, which in turn leads to kind of a lot of continued learning. I feel like there's never a day that I am working on a task that I don't learn something new or find a new way to apply things, while at the same time kind of expanding a library of things that I employ pretty regularly. Ultimately, my goal as a tech artist is to try and make other people's lives and jobs easier with tool sets and solutions and sharing knowledge and understanding of a broad range of how things work, kind of on a more advanced art plane, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. It seems like a lot of times tech artists have their hands dipped in every single part of game development. So you are kind of the catch-all, be-all in a lot of ways. Specifically today, I want to take that scope because that's really, really big, right? And I want to try and bring the conversation specifically around tech art and how it pertains to visual effects, either on the film side or even in the game side. Can we kind of discuss how VFX artists can work with tech artists. And I know sometimes the tech artist is the VFX artist in companies. How does that kind of like execution and that learning process work within the VFX realm?
So I don't know anything about film, right? I haven't worked on film before. But in terms of where the boundary is between VFX and tech art, once again, that's really difficult to say. It depends on the studio where they draw the line and how they define what a tech artist is. I think probably get into this a bit later as well. But from my experience at work, we usually let VFX artists do all the VFX, obviously. But if they run into kind of a functionality wall or something that requires very specific attention to performance optimization or constraints or direct interfacing with any kind of gameplay logic that needs custom hooks to be set up and so on, that is kind of out of the scope of what a VFX artist does, then tech art helps out. That's kind of, that's how it is here, right?
Yeah. So it's interesting you're talking about company differences, right? So at Unity, since we're not game development centric, we're game have engines so other people's can be a creator, right? So a lot of the jobs that tech artists have in Unity is more professional services, very PS oriented. So by doing that, the tech artists in this case are enabling other people to be better at their job in their company. It's like another step removed from what does your company do with tech artists. So it's very unique. And when we're hiring, we always look at, okay, tech artist is actually a super generalist with a side of something. So we have an environment tech artist who understands C# or Python or whatever, but also understands that section of an environment, understands some interior design, understand architectural work. That is that flow. And then we can train. You can always train somebody the tech side of that portion over time within onboarding portions. So I think that it's interesting that we're talking about what is, and then who defines what is different, very different. Yeah.
I think it's often like my suspicion is that studios define tech art as the things that no one else can do. It kind of, it ends up being like the realization, hey, we need someone to build tools for the artists, and all of our programs are busy and none of our artists know programming. So we need someone to do that. And I guess that would be a tech artist, right? And so I think in a lot of studios then that kind of runs itself in that same direction. And it's kind of historically grown what tech art means in that specific studio. And I think it's always kind of filling the gaps left in the skill sets of the rest of the team. Like, for example, say you don't have a lighting artist in your studio, for example, right? Then maybe it falls to a tech artist to do, I don't know, the color grading, post-processing. But then you hire a dedicated lighting artist, and the tech artist no longer needs to do that because there is someone who does it. But often tech art, I think, can be the catch-all discipline. And like you said, they're generalists. It's it's super interesting. It's something different every day. Like you can jump from kind of tweaking values in the shader and or building specific VFX or tools or programming and so on from one day to the next. And it's always something different, which is cool. So I love that.
Definitely agreed. You guys kind of set the stage perfectly for that answer. I feel like generalists in whatever engine or discipline they're using, especially actually cross-discipline generalists, have a really good mark for tech art, kind of being that general safety net that, not just kind of hangs there and waits for stuff, but also is kind of reaching in and helping with solutions kind of along the way, expanding the possibility space of what your team can do and empowering other people to do their best work is the way that you do your best work as a tech artist. I feel it's a really nice kind of inner social dynamic as well with the team, where you kind of get to be involved in a lot of conversations that otherwise kind of mainline roles you might not get to experience as many portions of the development process. Makes it really exciting.
I'd love to dive into some of the specifics. We talked kind of like of the overarching kind of thought of what is tech art, and I'm curious why it's important, but specifically on a day-to-day, some of the activities that we take place, especially in the skills, the tangible and the intangible, what is that for tech art? And I want to start this with Jan talking about this idea of like being in a problem-solving mindset. What does that all mean?
Yeah, this is something that we talked about in the preparation for this. So one of the most important skills I think that a tech artist can have is being able to systematically tackle and approach any kind of problem. That usually means understanding the problem first, like what exactly is the thing that people want to achieve or that I want to achieve. Sorry, it's going to be a bit abstract now and maybe a little bit weird, but maybe we can go into specifics after this. As game dev, like we always have to kind of reinvent the wheel every new generation, like every new project, because tech moves so fast, expectations change and rise, and studios want to do something different after their current project. And you always have to learn new things. You always have to kind of keep up and try new stuff that nobody has ever done before. So it's difficult to keep up. It's difficult to kind of establish solid and fixed pipelines that never have to change and adapt. And inevitably, you will run into problems. You will kind of want to do something and you don't know how, or you try to do it the old way and you can't because some external thing is blocking it, or there are competing constraints or whatever.
Yeah, or legacy code that you have to work around.
Oh, yeah. Oh, God. I don't even want to think about it. Yeah. But to get around that, and that's what I think is like one of the core skills of a tech artist, and it's also kind of something that I think is important to look for in hiring, is how do you approach a problem? Do you identify, for example, like who is this for? What exactly is the objective that we want to achieve? What exactly is blocking it? And what are the steps I need to take to get from A to B? From experience, almost every problem can be broken down into smaller problems. Usually you can then break them down even further until they become trivial. And doing that systematically, if you get like a complex task, something that someone who is not technical is like, hey, I want to do this thing. As a tech artist, it is your job to kind of translate that into actionable steps, into, okay, what do I need to do to actually help this person achieve that, or to get there, to get to the goal? And it's basically, it requires in the first step, it requires a lot of empathy to figure out, all right, what do they actually mean? It's like, because if that's a non-technical person or less technical person, they might not speak your language, but it's your job to speak their language. As a freelance, you would say you have to speak client, right?
Yes.
So you want to jump in?
I wanted to point out something really particular that we run into a lot in VFX, which is the XY problem, right? I mean, we run into this all the time, but I think, Jan, you can probably speak to that because you're speaking to it indirectly, but client issues So I mean, we see this all the time, right? You have an issue where someone comes to you with a problem. However, they are not meaning that problem. They just think that's the actual issue. That there's an underlying problem that they just haven't broken it down yet. I don't have a direct one in front of me that I can think of. There's a really good one at the xyproblem.info, but yes, maybe Glad can remind me because we've gone over this about 10,000 times in Discord.
The core of it is you want to achieve X, and you think that the solution is Y. And so you don't ask for help with X, you ask for help with Y. And Y, I mean, not Y as in the question word Y, but like the thing that you're trying to do that doesn't work, that might not be the best approach. So one of the most useful questions in game development for tech artists, and I think for every technical person, is what do you want to achieve? Like, what exactly are you trying to do? And why? And what is it for? And then when that is clear, you can think about how, and you can discuss kind of how you can bring in all the other stakeholders that might be interested and relevant to keep that on track and make sure that departments don't really,
Glad. How do I stop panning texture from jumping when I counter animate the speed? Right. Oh, well.
Yeah.
Were there any examples, maybe Christian, you have one, of a time when you did have to problem solve in your work or in some kind of technical problem in the past? And as Jan was kind of giving us a blueprint of this idea of like X and Y, or even like reverse engineering the problem, I was curious if y'all had some personal experience of actually following that.
Sure. I'm trying to think of a recent solution that I can discuss. I'm kind of realizing now that I haven't done as much like personal independent work this year as much as I've done contract work, and then now work that's like under NDA with a studio, to kind of keep it at like an abstract level. I think that there's an attitude that I personally have to take towards looking at a problem or a stack of problems at the beginning of the day, is that I may not immediately know the solution, or I may have a few different ideas for solutions, but I know in the past, as I've been patient with myself and with the process and with the people that I'm working with, that I've always come to a solution. It can be a little bit scary going in and not knowing an immediate solution for something, because I feel like maybe as tech artists, sometimes we feel like we have to know a little bit of everything because we're reaching into so many different areas. I think an additional challenge is having the kind of confidence in yourself to know that you're going to come to that solution at some point. I'm trying to think of a particular example of this, but nothing is immediately jumping out to me that I can say at the moment. All my stuff this year has been
all that NDA
on
stuff,
behalf of other people. Yeah. So.
Yeah. It's the same here. Sorry, I have to be abstract a lot of the time. But I think what you said is an interesting point as well. Like, you often get asked as the tech artist, okay, how do we do this? And can we do this? And you are expected to kind of know the answer to all of the problems, right? Part of that for a well-functioning team also needs to be that you feedback, hey, I don't know yet, but I can find out. Give me a day and I will run a few tests and see what we can do. to solve this particular issue.
I want to shift to another topic that tech artists deal with a lot, and VFX artists kind of deal with this sometimes. In fact, VFX artists, it's very rare that you find a VFX artist who is both like amazing at tech and amazing at art. Typically, they kind of lean toward one side or the other. And for a lot of VFX artists, they lean on tech artists to manage shaders or material building, especially when you're looking into like Unreal, very math heavy things. So Christian, I was wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about what are shaders and why are they important and how do they exactly work?
Sure. So a broad level, the shader pipeline just kind of tells a given pixel on screen or on a model what it should be doing based on a variety of different variables, how you want it to behave. So in the context of VFX, you want something that maybe spawns a particular shape and you want it to dissolve in a certain series of shapes, or like a grid, or a hexagon dissolve, something like that is like a really common VFX thing. Something on that side is going to be utilizing a particular texture and panning through the alpha level of it and using that as a basis for that dissolve function. Shaders have the capacity to be extremely powerful. They also have the capacity to be super, super expensive. And so it's important to kind of step back when you're developing a particular shader solution for something and trying to decide if it is like pragmatic to be using this solution, or is there something that can leverage something a little bit lighter that can achieve the same thing? You look at like a site, you look at something like Shader Toy, and just last week I think somebody built like an entire volumetric cloud path tracer that can run in a web view, albeit at like 14 frames per second or something like that. But just the tech behind a single shader that's generating such an intense image is a great example of how much power there is behind shaders and what they can be used for, especially in conjunction with other systems like VFX.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
A lot. That's a lot, which is what shaders are, right? They're a lot.
They're a lot. Yeah, it's a big rabbit hole for sure.
One of the things you mentioned about shaders is that they can be really expensive. And us working with shaders all the time to create very unique particles, we have to be cognizant of performance and optimizing those shaders to go well. One of the things that falls kind of under the tech artist belt in tandem with the VFX is performance optimization. But what exactly does performance optimization mean? Can you take that, Jan?
Sure. It's one of my favorite topics, I think. So this comes back a little bit to someone as a tech artist who doesn't respect disciplinary boundaries so much, because in order to make something like like a shader that works well, you have to understand like what does the art team want to do, like what exactly is the VFX artist or the environment artist or character artist or whatever, what exactly are their requirements and their needs, and how do I make actually something that is maybe even better than what they expect. But at the same time, you need to have knowledge about, okay, how does my renderer work? Like what requirements does the engine have? What abilities does the engine give me to do stuff? You have to kind of understand how all those parts fit together, and you might be tempted to look under the hood with profiling tools like, I don't know, RenderDoc or something like that. See how things work in other games or in your own game. Then you get more insight into how things actually work. And so that's, for me, that's always something that's very motivating, kind of trying to understand things like how does the machinery work, right? And when you have that knowledge, you can often kind of shortcut specific problems by saying, all right, we have this situation here, the scene in a level where, I don't know, when this effect plays, it's super expensive. And there are lots of kind of common problems that I think people are also colloquially familiar with, like overdraw, or, in earlier times, poly counts were very expensive, ever very relevant. Nowadays, it's more about kind of concurrent poly counts on a screen.
I want to ask real quick, when you talk about expensive, what are the consequences of something being expensive? Why is that such a big deal?
So you have to consider that if you have a game that runs at 30 frames per second, that means that your entire game frame, that entire image needs to render in, 30 times per second, which means you have 33 milliseconds to render the entire image, to do everything. And then you have to do that 29 more times. If you double the frame rate to 60, then you only have half the time to do everything. And obviously, like the quality of everything should still look the same. So we often end up fighting over fractions of a millisecond. By fighting, I mean fighting to kind of save those, right? When you have things that aren't built optimally or that are built naively or something like that, then it can cost a lot. And a big part of optimization is identifying what those are and finding ways to keep things looking as pretty as it did, but being as cheap as possible.
Do either of y'all have examples of how you've been able to optimize something in the past?
So I think something that hasn't necessarily been talked about too much here, but that I think still pertains to tech art is kind of helping to build conventions for how things should be built out moving forward, as well as tackling, issues as they come up. I think kind of preventative maintenance is a big part of handling, performance issues, ensuring that the different sections of the art team understand, polycount restrictions, shader structures, texture, resolution targets, and stuff like that. All of those can kind of set a really solid foundation to make everybody's life easier kind of down the line. And so then when you're putting out fires further along, you're putting out the fires that are popping up more recently rather than the ones that you kind of quietly set on the onset without realizing. And then, leveraging these broken workflows can lead to just a rat's nest of issues that can be really costly to solve across a bunch of different departments.
Yeah, mostly getting rid of as much as you possibly can off your memory so that way you can run. It all depends. It's so funny. So this happens constantly in our Discord, right? So we say, how can we solve this? And then the first answer is, well, it kind of depends. What are you doing? This leads all the way. This is going to constantly go back to what Jan had said, is you have to know what you want. Okay, is your answer you need 6 more milliseconds, period? That's what you need? Okay, well, then we need to look at what's the largest problem. Just get rid of it as quickly as you can. Fresh from Kaluza. Yeah, I think Alessa actually has it. Very much everything. Why not? Sure. It's fine. You got memories, right? Laying around. Yeah. So a specific problem that I've actually had to deal with, other than just the standard, make sure that your LODs are working or they're automatically set up, or make sure that your texture, you're not running with 4K textures when you just don't need it, right? Basic optimization stuff.
Well, Christian said something that was super interesting. He mentioned that preventive maintenance is the best way to avoid being overwhelmed with too many tasks in game development. So one of the things that I would be curious to learn, Anthony, and this is kind of touching base on another thing tech artists do, is what kind of tools can you create to help with preventive maintenances, and what exactly does it mean to make a tool?
Sure. Okay, so I'm going to answer the latter first because then I can lead into what you had asked previously. So making a tool is exactly what we talked about in the beginning, which was making it easier for other people to work. Man hours is a thing. All have to do things. So I'll give you an example. If you have 20 artists that are all having to input some type of geometry into their system, let's say it goes in whatever engine, that means that you have to go through all of this ingest, right? So you have to make sure that there are no errors, there's no problems happening, there's the UVs check out, there's just a lot of pieces to this puzzle. And you want to write, in my opinion, the best way to do this is if you're going to go with Unreal, you'll have a Python tool. This tool is designed specifically to look at everything that needs to get done, so that way the artist doesn't have to stress about it. It takes off all of those clicks from their man hours. And if you have 50 artists that are inputting and it takes them an hour to do it, you just saved 50 hours from the company. That could be several $1,000s and time. And also they get to be artists instead of just, oh, well, I have an error. What do I do? And then that stops you from working. And it's a problem. It's a blocker, and that's bad, right? So you make tools. This is very, very common for ingest issues, characters, especially if they have rigs. Rigs break everything. So animation is scary sometimes. So that's my kind of understanding with tools is you want to know exactly, again, what they want to do. And you look at the steps. The way that I really got started in optimization and tool making was I went to the artists that were doing it. I sat down, I watched them and have them tell me every step. I wrote it down. This is step 1. I literally click file. Okay. Do I have to have them click file? I shouldn't have to. So I write script to do that for them, right? And you just do that until that work is down to them just being an artist, not worrying about anything else, right? That's tool making in a nutshell, in my opinion. And then what you just mentioned in the former, which was Christian's concept here of preventative maintenance in ways, is knowing that the ingest is going to have problems with this certain area down the road for optimization. You don't want to pre-optimize too much, but you want to look at the big swaths. Does this have an LOD? If not, you're not accepting it. LODs maybe have to say in the name, the geo, like LOD colon or whatever. Then you check for that. Is there that in the mesh? Okay, no, sorry, you didn't throw out an error. No LODs, you got to do this again, artist. And then that saves people some time. It's very preventative. And that's what I would do in that case. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's really good, really helpful to kind of automate as much and kind of to automate all of the checks that you would have to do manually, because it can free people's minds, right? And just focus on what they want to do and what they're good at.
Now, we're going a little off of the questions that we had earlier, but where does AI fit in all this? Because you keep talking about automation, like tech art and AI. Is there a future?
Yes, there is. So there's Art Engine, which is a different way of thinking for things. Art Engine has an AI model dealing with masking systems. So if you need a mask, it just knows because there's openings in certain areas, and it notices the pixel difference and contrast difference, which creates the mask, which then you don't have to spend time literally drawing out the mask, which that's kind of done in some other studios as well, or other applications. But it's difficult to speak to creating automated tools in that way. You need to have a human touch to know what those tasks and those lists, the steps that you're going to take as an artist, or as a programmer, or anyone. Everyone's workflow is going to be different per project, per studio. So there has to be some kind of touch there. Anthony has a high instruction count. Christian. Yeah.
Maybe a more interesting topic for AI is actually in rendering.
Yes. Oh, good call. Yeah.
Because, when ray tracing first came out, it right out of the gate came with like an AI-based denoiser. And now we have things like these upscaling solutions like DLSS and so on, also kind of using machine learning or AI models. And the benefit there is basically saving time and preserving quality, time as in time in the frame, right? And I think that's probably the most promising application of AI for the moment, just kind of in the render. In tools, I think it's difficult because you would basically have to teach an AI to think like a tech artist, right? To understand the team and the needs and so on. I think there are probably very limited applications at the moment in very specific things like masking, for example, or in content creation tools.
Right.
A lot of that I think is very promising, but we can be entirely automated just yet.
It's difficult to think. So if you think machine learning models, their purpose is to find a high percentage of what is right from the learned model. And if you automate all of the taskings through an AI model, then everything ends up becoming brown. Right? It's all just a model. It's difficult. You have to provide contrast, and most probability concepts go to a median or go to whatever curve and distribution curve you're going to set up. So you can't set I don't think that you can do that currently. It may happen when we go into quantum world and we're all about to die, and that would be great. And hopefully we'll all get to go and put our heads into the internet and become the Matrix. But yeah,
so, I don't know, man. I really like food, so maybe that's not really that good of an option.
Man, that's fair.
I wanted to ask about people that want to get into tech art. I see them pop up every once in a while on Discord or the forums, and they're like, how do I become a technical artist? And there's not really like a clear career path. It's not like you can go to school and like learn. What are your thoughts on that? What some advice do you have to some aspiring tech artist?
Yeah, I'm just going to give a quick one here. Go have life. You design and understanding to be a tech artist, you need existence. You need to not just play games only. You really have to go live a bit. Go camping and see what fire is all about, and then see why it's unique and how it's hard to replicate, and learn about it. Physics. Go learn math. Go learn some you have to learn what people don't like, so that way you have to learn some behavioralism, some psychology. It is hard and all encompassing.
I'm not sure I would do it the same way, honestly. But also, one of my notes is that, there is not really a single path into tech art. Right. I think it comes down to when you encounter a problem, are you frustrated or intimidated, or do you get excited about it, right? It's like, ooh, a new problem to solve, exciting new things to learn.
Yeah.
And I think that is kind of the mindset that will turn you from whatever you are currently into a tech artist, because tech artists come from all different other disciplines. There's rarely kind of someone who starts out as a tech artist. Most people do something else first and then move into tech art, right? It's kind of what you said earlier, that people have specific things that they're good at, but then they're also tech artists, right?
Where did you start, and how did you end up in tech art? I'm really curious to know what Christian's story is here. I just met Christian like 10 minutes ago.
Jan, do you want to go first, or do you want me to take it
I'm
on?
happy to, but go ahead if you like.
I started out in game design kind of as a whole in 2014, coming off of getting a PC for the first time a couple years prior, and my friends kind of telling me about like modding games and kind of really systemic stuff. Like I didn't know what Minecraft was until I got a PC, and my friends were like, "You have to try this. It's not Halo. It's crazy." Because I had a very narrow scope of what games kind of could be and could do, and it unlocked this endless curiosity in me that I had to kind of continue following. And so my time kind of got split between, my daily life where I was working, a non-games job and, getting married and having kids and getting a house and stuff. And then having this burning curiosity that had me, reading game design articles in my spare time and, eventually downloading different game engines and trying them out and, working until 5 a.m. and not realizing it. And, kind of evolving into this, like I felt like I was kind of living two lives to some degree, because I didn't want my interests to get in the way of like my family life and stuff. I didn't want my family to suffer because I was like interested in something that didn't seem fair. I ended up kind of just like measuring how much sleep I could cut out of my schedule so that I could continue learning. And because I was doing that at that schedule, it felt unfair for me to subject other people, like other game developers, to working with me at that kind of a punishing schedule. And so it led me to just kind of sticking to myself for a really long time. And I mean, I still reached out and made a lot of friends and met a lot of people. And it's been, a really awesome social experience. But I didn't really start putting myself out into accepting, a wider range of contract jobs and working with other people until the last, year and a half or so. And so because I was kind of reining myself in and staying independent, it forced me to have to expand my skill set to solve the problems that I wanted to solve. It would start off, I played like the OG Rust that had like massive grass fields. I was like, I want to make a bunch of grass. And then that turned into, how do I could model a plane of grass. That's super easy. How do I model a tree? That's more complex. How do I make the grass bend? That gets into shaders. How do I make it generate in a way that's efficient? And then it just kind of led me to branching in all sorts of different directions and trying a lot of different things out. I don't think that is by any means the most efficient way to become a tech artist. This took me 7 years of expanding and late nights and nervousness about, putting myself out there and reaching out to other people. I would say that the other core portion of being a tech artist, besides, having this expansive skill set, is to get involved with other people. If there's a local game development scene that you can be a part of, or a group that you can talk to, Discord servers, the Twitter community is fantastic for the indie scene. I don't think that I would have grown as much as I have as a technical artist had it not been for me finally like reaching out to other people and really getting that perspective and that support. So, don't box yourself into one area. If you want to be a tech artist, definitely expand and reach out and try and solve these solutions yourself. But then also don't be afraid to reach out to other people to figure out how to solve those issues, because we are all each other's best assets, and the world is better when we're working together.
Absolutely. And even though we have like 4 white guys on here, there are other women and people of color who are in the tech artist scene as well. So don't feel like that's a limiting factor.
Yeah, definitely. Freya was slated to be here, and her knowledge and skill set on shaders is like vastly better than anything I could ever imagine to be. I'm glad that she is getting some rest, but I'm sad that I couldn't hear her speak on it, because it would have been, really illuminating for sure.
I'm still curious about my path into tech art, because it kind of came from a similar angle as Christian's there.
Me
I originally
too.
started
I'm
out
excited.
I originally started out kind of my first forays into game dev, or back in school, in high school, when I was 14 years old, and making levels for Unreal and then Unreal Tournament back in the old days, and kind of wanted to do that when I grew up, right? But life got in the way a little bit, and I ended up kind of going to university for something completely different. But then I did spend some time working on some mods back then for Unreal Tournament and Return 2003 and so on. And one experience I took from that is that, these were mods, these were free time projects. So you can't really rely on people the same way that you do when it's a paid job. And I think subconsciously I must have gotten burned by that a little bit, because when I got back into game dev around 7-8 years ago or so, it it kind of stuck with me that I should be able to know, at least in a rudimentary manner, how to do everything on a game, so that I would be able to kind of to not be blocked by the absence of someone who, has to leave a project or a team or for some reason or another. So I literally went on kind of a learning spree and tried to learn everything. And it's not really the most efficient way to go about it, but it meant that there weren't any boundaries on what I was allowed to learn and to study, and I just followed kind of my own curiosity. And similar to what Christian said, it was, I wonder how I can do this. For example, can I solve this problem in the material in Unreal? Can I build something like this game I just played? And it was a lot of experimentation and a lot of kind of just small prototypes and testing to see, is it possible? Can I do this? That just taught me a lot. And still my favorite way to learn is kind of to have a concrete problem that I want to solve, and there's a key piece of knowledge or skill missing, and I need to acquire it in order to solve this problem. So I think it's called like objective-based learning or something like that. That you don't learn stuff just for the sake of the stuff, but you learn something in order to solve a concrete issue or in order to build something. And I would encourage everyone to do that, because obviously it works for me. Some people learn better kind of from books and kind of in a very monolithic way, but I always need to have something to apply the knowledge that I just learned, and it's the best way to learn something for me. Like, I have this thing that I want to do, I don't know how, what do I need to learn to do it? And then you just expand, and it escalates very quickly.
That's really interesting. I should have added, there's this thing that I'm really reading into a lot recently, which is about the learner mindset or growth mindset. And this is very common within a lot of tech artists that I ask these questions to people that I work with. And every single tech artist has the same concept of, this is what I think is right, but if you tell me, and if you show me that this is right in a different way, I now update my right after I check my assumptions, right? And I kind of allow my biases to kind of falter, just go away, because cognitive bias happens, but I allow it as much as possible to say, I'm not right, but this is how I understand it currently, right? So something that I wanted to say that so my background becoming a technical artist, technically I started as a technical artist in the AAA world. But if I don't go by titles, I was 5 or 6 years in the indie world, just putting every hat on I could. I designed, I did business, I did everything. I learned programming, understood blueprints, did materials, textures, modeling, animation, rigging, scripting as much as I could of that, as much as possible, because I wanted to make something. I had something in mind. But you reminded me, Jan, just what you said about looking at something and you want to learn it. I was playing Satisfactory last night, and I stood on some sand, and it's fantastic. And there was some footprints, and I was like, I don't even remember walking on this. But then wait, there's footprints. So I just looked down and started running around and looking at the footprints. And now, this is very interesting. It looks different. It almost looks like it has displacement on here because there's an actual animation to this. Now I have to go make this. So then I literally quit right there at that moment, and I had to start messing around. So I think that thing, which is, this is so interesting. I need to touch this. I need to break it down and understand what's happening here, is very common amongst technical artists. And I don't know how to specifically define what that is, except for curiosity, possibly. But yeah, that defines my life as a tech artist. Is, ooh, I want to do this. Yeah. Go do it.
Definitely agreed. Yeah. My friends, my non-developer friends, really don't. They like playing games. We like playing games together, but they also joke that they hate playing games with me because I can't see a new piece of tech in a game without being like, oh, I bet you that's this and this and this, and then I get into I start nerding out over it big time. That's
Stop looking at the wall.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. I think that's something I see with a lot of tech artists online that I've met, that they will take on a personal project because they saw it in a game and they wanted to figure out how it works, and so then they go and build it out. I did the same thing I played Red Dead 2 and I saw the snow, and I wanted to figure out how the snow worked over such long distances, and that led to like a 2-month project of digging into it, and it was great. It was a super satisfying thing. So I think that's something really common with tech artists for sure.
One more thing I want to add to how do you get into tech art. I think it's probably easier to grow as a tech artist in smaller teams where you have to wear many hats. Because if you're looking at kind of a big AAA studio with hundreds of people, they will have specialists for almost everything. So like I mentioned earlier, the gaps that you have to fill as a tech artist become much more defined and much smaller. Whereas if you're in an indie team with like 3 people, 5 people or whatever, then you have a lot more more opportunity to dip into things, to try things, to learn new stuff, to become better at the whole thing, all of game development, basically. And I think that's very valuable. And it's also like, it's easier than ever to get started, to just download a free engine, download free tools, and just build stuff. And like Christian said, there's a huge community out there of people who will kind of help you when you're stuck, who you can bug and show your awesome things to that you've made, which I would also encourage, by the way. If you make stuff, post it online. It's a great way to get feedback and to get validation and so on. And it can be very motivating. And
just like a lot of aspiring game developers may be asking the question, do I learn Unity or do I learn Unreal or Godot or whatever the program is? Oftentimes when people are kind of learning tech art, they ask that same question, but when it comes to learning how to code, do I learn C#? Do I learn Python? What's your answer to that? And we'll start with Jan.
Same answer as before. Whatever you need to do the job. Like whatever you're trying to do, pick whatever programming language that you need to build stuff in the engine that you've chosen, right? Pick whatever engine you think, I don't know, looks most attractive to you or kind of makes most sense for the project that you're trying to do. It doesn't really matter. In the end, once you know 2 or 3 programming languages, you can very quickly adapt to all of the others. It's similar with engines, it's a bit different. Like there's a lot of kind of investment into like the particular idiosyncrasies of each individual engine and all of the tribal knowledge that you acquire. It's not really documented or a little bit hidden. So for me, that's always going to be Unreal because that's how I got started and I have a lot of kind of brand loyalty there and I know it like the back of my hand. So it would be, it would make sense for me to use something else, right? But in the end, it doesn't really matter. Whatever works for your project. Just be curious, learn stuff, make stuff.
I did want to give you all an opportunity to do any kind of shout outs or self-promotions for any projects or things that y'all kind of have going in your own pipeworks or your own lives. Anthony, Christian, Jan, do y'all have anything?
I'm writing a book in my off time, which means I don't sleep because I work and then write a book, and it's hard. Authoring is very difficult. So if you guys want to write a book, maybe don't. It is hard, man. That's pretty much it. I wanted to touch on the whole Unity versus Unreal thing. I think Jan is completely correct. I work at Unity and I love Unreal and I love Unity. I've played with Godot. I've put it just doesn't matter. You play, if you're going to be a tech artist, first of all, just play. If you're happy in Unity, work with Unity, or go check out what Unreal has, because there's more material on the internet than you'll ever. It's incredible. So just choose one and go play and Google around and see what you can do. Don't get stuck. The best you can until it becomes your career, and then you work on that and become the best you can at that. Since I work at Unity now, I'm learning that, and I'm not good at it, but I'm much better with Unreal because I have 10 years at 9 years of it. So that was a bit of a change.
We're going to end with this last question. Is a beard essential to being a tech artist? Yay or nay?
No, definitely not. It helps though.
I think it's a symptom of being a tech artist, not having time to shave.
Rock on. Hey, everybody, thank you so much for coming on to today's roundtable to talk about WTF is Tech Art. We really appreciate your time sharing your sagely advice on everything that has to do with game development and programming and art and just tech in general. So thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you for having us.